Chapter 8. Night on Goblin Mountain. As night fell, the travellers were making camp. Polly lit a fire, and Friday found a wild rabbit to cook, which was lucky because he was too tired to cook for himself. The rabbit whipped up some omelettes while the travellers gazed out over the mountainside into the vast, starry night. And there's a picture of the wild rabbit doing the cooking. Far below, the lights of Lamonic Bibber twinkled welcomingly. The houses looked warm and inviting, and Polly imagined she could hear the happy laughter of children coming from within. In the middle of town, a plume of blue smoke was just visible. It was coming from Martin Laundrette's very secret invention, the Rippleizer 2000. Gazing over the scene, Polly felt tears well up in her eyes, not just because the rabbit was peeling an onion, but because she realised how much she loved Lamonic Bibber. Every last bit of it. "I loves that town," she said fiercely, and her heart swelled with pride as she spoke. "It's the best place in the world, and I don't never want to live nowhere else. That's all I got to say on the subject, the end." "Well said, Polly," nodded Friday. He himself felt a little homesick for his secret cottage in the woods, and a nice Sunday roast, and sitting on Mrs. Lovely's lap eating yoghurts. "Tell you what," he said, taking out his grand piano, "this is the perfect moment for a song. I've got a new one I've been working on. It's called Me and Uncle Radish. Me and Uncle Radish. Well, me and Uncle Radish, we go everywhere together." "Shh," whispered Polly urgently, putting out the fire with a mug of water. "I think I done heard something creeping in the bushes." Polly and Friday huddled together, trembling in the darkness. After a minute, the rabbit joined them, twitching its whiskers like a total whirly. And now they could hear the noises, strange hisses and creaks and moans. And then they heard a twig snap, and then another snapped, and then another. And then the moon, it did come out from behind a cloud, and in its silvery light the travellers saw the game was up. For they were completely surrounded by goblins, standing there, snapping twigs in their bumpy old hands. "Get them!" commanded Captain Ankles, and at this the goblins advanced, eyes wide and claws glinting wickedly. "The poor rabbit!" cried Polly. "This isn't no place for you, little one," she said, scooping it up in her arms and carrying it to a safe place underneath a bush. You see, that was just the sort of girl Polly was. She always looked out for people smaller than herself, especially if they were rabbits. "Right," said Friday. "Now leave the rest to me." And he reached for his broadsword, the legendary Lord Champion. It was made from the strongest steel known to man, and it shone like a flaming star of justice, and nothing could defeat it in battle. And it was lying on Friday's sofa in his secret cottage next to an empty yoghurt pot. "Brummigans!" cried Friday. "Forgot the broadsword!" And then he had an idea. "Get back, you monsters," he warned, doing a mime as if he was holding a mighty sword after all, "or taste the blade of my legendary invisible broadsword, Transparento, which has slain many, many goblins and trolls and an elk." The goblins hissed and started to back off, but not Captain Ankles. He wasn't fooled for a moment. "Invisible sword not real," he said. "Old bloke just pretending. Look, he just miming." And there's a picture there of Friday threatening the goblins with his broadsword, his invisible broadsword, I should say. And then the travellers were done for. The goblins advanced again, and this time there was no stopping them. They threw Polly and Friday into a great big sack and tied it up with dirty magic string you can't escape from unless you're Harry Potter. And then they lifted the sack above their gruesome heads, and back up the mountain they started, hooting and shouting to wake the dead. From beneath the bush, the little rabbit watched the whole terrible scene. "I will never forget that brave girl who carried me to safety," its bright green eyes seemed to say. "Well, I might, but I'll try really hard not to." "Polly," whispered Friday hopefully, as they were bumped and bundled along in the sack. Are you Harry Potter? No, said Polly. I'm Polly. That's what I thought, said Friday gloomily. Can you reach the horn? Said Polly. I think this might be a good time to summon the spirit of the rainbow. But try as he might, Friday couldn't reach it, and with their last hope gone, the prisoners fell silent, each fearing the worst. And on the goblins marched. On and on and on. All night long they marched, until by the time they finally reached Goblin Cave, a grey dawn was breaking over the mountain, and the crows cawed mournfully in the bare trees. Hello, Goblin King! We catch the meddlers! Captain Ankles called out. Shut up! Came a familiar voice. I'm trying to watch Bag of Sticks. There's something familiar about that familiar voice, thought Polly, but in all the commotion as she and Friday were carried through the cave, she couldn't work out what. Halt! She heard Captain Ankles say, and then Oink Balloon ripped open the sack with his claws, and the travellers were face to face with the Goblin King himself. You flippin' hasslers, spat the Goblin King, coming so close that Polly could smell his meaty old breath. Don't you know I'm the best, 'cause I'm so powerful and handsome? And suddenly Polly knew. She realised the dreadful truth. Fry me in vegetable oil and call me a giant bag of crisps, she thought to herself. The Goblin King is Mr. Gum. Oh, and there's Billy William. He's probably calling himself the Burger Wizard or something, I expect. And that is the end of the chapter. The next chapter is called Chapter 9, Polly and Friday in the Cave.